Well, thank you, Mayor, Council members. Bob Weeks, 2451 Regency Lakes Court in Wichita. I'd just like to remind this council that no matter how much spin supporters and this council puts on it, tax increment financing turns over taxation to private interests. I think we all should believe, to the extent that we must have taxation, it should be for public purposes to pay for things that everyone benefits from. But what this council is considering today is turning over this public function to the benefit of one person. Now, some I know on this council believe that a tax increment financing is not really a benefit to the applicant because the applicant's going to have to pay the property taxes in any case. And that's true, only though if you are willing to willfully refuse to consider the entire economic argument that needs to be made. To properly represent the interests of the entire city, we need to look further. We need to look at stage 2, or what happens next. And when we look, we see that under TIF, or tax increment financing, the vast majority of the taxes paid are redirected away from the public treasury and back to one person or one business firm's interest. Now, I know also that some people are going to bring up the but-for argument, which is to say that none of this economic development will happen unless the TIF district is created. And it's easy to create scenarios that show government assistance is necessary. But we've seen examples lately where applicants stood before this council and told you that they must have some form of assistance, that it is impossible to proceed without it. But after being denied assistance, the projects proceeded. In fact, the current applicant, Mr. Maxwell, his agent, made such a claim to this council earlier this year regarding special property tax treatment through industrial revenue bonds that he said was necessary for a project to proceed in downtown Wichita. This council declined to offer that assistance, but the project moved ahead anyway. Now, if TIF provided a benefit, all this might be academic, but compelling research that no one on this council has controverted tells us this. First, one study says we find evidence that the non-TIF areas of municipalities that use TIF grow no more rapidly and perhaps more slowly than similar municipalities that do not use TIF. This is not just theoretical speculation. This is people actually looking at what has happened and what has not happened in cities that use TIF districts. So I believe if we are concerned about the level of development in the entire city, we should reject tax increment financing as a policy. Now, I know that some people on this council are very concerned about jobs. Well, another study performed by a Kansas person actually says TIF districts supporting retail development, and that's what this is, have a negative effect on municipal employment. So if we're concerned about jobs for everyone, we should reject retail TIF districts. And you know, we might also look to another state for an example. The state that's perhaps been the leader in the application of TIF, although they're called redevelopment districts there, is California. The new governor of California, Jerry Brown, is working to eliminate the use of TIF districts and to close down those that exist. His reasoning is the state simply cannot afford them. I would also ask us to look at the characteristics of this particular applicant. The Wichita Business Journal reported this regarding a company Mr. Maxwell owned. Pixius proposes to repay over a 10-year period $1.3 million out of a $6.4 million loan from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Rural Utilities Service. So that's a $4.1 million obligation that this applicant took on and did not repay. That's government money. I would suggest that this person has had one bite at the government gravy train, and that would be enough. And then finally, I would note, as I have in the past, that at least one member of this council has accepted campaign contributions from Mr. Maxwell and his wife. Some jurisdictions have pay-to-play laws which prohibit office holders who have accepted campaign contributions from voting on measures that would enrich the contributor. We don't have these laws in Wichita, although I hope that we will, but there's no reason that this council can't act as though such laws are in place. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'd be happy to answer questions if there are any.
Councilman Meitzner.
Mr. Weeks, did you identify yourself as the author of Voice for Liberty?
No, I did not.
Is there any reason why?
I thought you all knew that. But yeah, I write a blog, The Voice for Liberty in Wichita.
Can I have a raise of hands of all the people that knew that he was the author of Voice of Liberty? So you have about a tenth of the people here. So no,
Okay.
the public does not know that.
I'd ask, what's the public policy consideration there?
Everybody that's come up here has identified themselves as the president of a homeowner association, president of a business group. You come up here and never identify yourself as to what you do. Okay, that's the first thing. I was on your site. We've talked about this before. I think it warrants clarification. You said in your presentation here, quote, one study and then another study. So you have reference material that you refer to that we are supposed to accept as adequate reference material.
Well, that is my hope that you would, yes.
Again, on your website, on yesterday's article that you wrote, when I look for your reference material, I see you highlight the Wichita City Clerk. This is regarding your petition, and it takes you to the office of the city clerk. Same paragraph, Sedgwick County Election Commissioner takes you to the office of the Sedgwick County Election Commissioner. But there again, when you go to the Wichita City Council, you go to your company called, or the supporting company called, what is it called?
Are you referring to Sunshine Review?
Yes. If you link on it, it goes to Sunshine Review. Now, aside from a month ago pointing out that you had outdated city council people, you've corrected that. In the city council section, you talk about terms and the people, but you make a comment that, or this supporting reference department makes a comment that says city council are working on meeting the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Clean Water Act. Council Member Michael O'Donnell called for the city and state to, quote, make the EPA as inconsequential as possible in order to help the city in its economic development. There's not one other statement in your description of the city council about anything other than the members and everything else. I'm not disparaging my fellow council member, Mr. O'Donnell, but if this is the reference material that you referred to earlier in your speech, one study, another study, and then you go to your own deal and your links, your studies are not necessarily what I would call fair assessments of the facts.
Well, Councilmember Meitzner, I'm sorry you don't agree with that. I didn't write that material. I might add that Sunshine Review is a website in a wiki format like the famous Wikipedia, which means that anyone, you yourself included, could make updates to that if you find that there's incorrect material. Might also add the city has a communications team with a budget over $500,000, and if they see incorrect information on a wiki type of site that they're able to correct, why don't they correct it?
I can't answer that part, but I can answer when you quote a study and another study, you're selling us that this is pretty good information. But on your same job or whatever it is that you do, it's not accurate and it's incomplete and it's misleading. I might also add that a month ago, I pointed out that under the Citizens Records Act, you disparage about an open records case, and it still says in your site today that is still pending. Is that closed or not? Did you get all the information that you needed under the Open Records Act? Because it's the only thing you say in here, and you make it, this site makes it sound like our city does not cooperate open records requests, which is absolutely incorrect.
Well, the material that you refer to has not been updated to include a decision that was made, I think, for political reasons. But I'm really surprised, Councilmember Meitzner, that you bring up this topic. That's not a proud moment for Wichita. We have a mayor and a city council that says we operate in an open and transparent manner, yet they have set up these third-party, taxpayer-supported institutions like the Wichita Downtown Development Corporation, that's the institution in question here, that despite being almost totally funded by taxes, refuse to admit that they are a public agency as the spirit and I believe the letter of the Kansas Open Records Act requires.
Okay, so again, your reference material from your speeches, you refer to all kinds of referenced data. and reference subjects and reference professors and reference studies, some even from Chicago. I'm surprised that we would be compared to Chicago. Frankly, I'm glad if we're not compared to Chicago. However, currently, the Sedgwick County District Attorney is investigating these cases. Is misleading, it's wrong, and if we're supposed to respect your comments and your reference material, I would suggest that your reference material is accurate, updated, and not misleading. And if you disagree with that, leave it alone. You've already changed names on your reference sites. You've made some corrections. This one was pointed out to you, and you chose not to change it.
Well, I appreciate you putting those words in my mouth, what I choose or not to do.
Okay.
I might add, should I refuse to link to the Wichita Eagle anymore? Are they absolutely correct in everything that they write?
I don't think so. I don't know. Okay, well, enough said. Thank you for your comments.
Member Clendenin?
In an interest to be transparent and fully forth with everything here, I am the council member that you referenced to as taking money and having had campaign contributions given to me in the form of $500 from the developer and $500 from his wife. And in the past, especially with votes up here, I have voted against that developer and against some of the projects that he wanted to do downtown. So to say that this is a pay-to-play environment is extremely misleading. I'm somewhat offended by that. And if anybody would like to know what money I have or have not taken, please find yourself to the state's website, and they would be happy to let everybody know what all of us have received from any developer inside the city of Wichita. That's all I have to say about that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.